Hi, and welcome to Ask the Manager. We're finally having another show. We got a little caught up with summer travel, and here we are. It's still hot out, but we have our newly elected, who's now not newly elected, Select Board member, Gregg Richards, with us today. He was elected in May, and
Yep.
we're now into tomorrow's August 1st. My birthday month, in case you want to know, send presents. But
They have that.
so, anyways, I have to jump into this one. I see it all the time, every day. Weeds, weeds, weeds. So you go to pull out of Gale Ave or Crescent Street and you can't see because of the weeds. You can't pull out of Bunker Hill Road because of the weeds. But when you come from Maple Ave to Bunker Hill Road, there's weeds on both sides of the sidewalk, which they've been trimmed this summer, but they came back fast, obviously because of the weather. But my question is, along the inner part of the sidewalk, is that the responsibility of the landowner? Because what I'm concerned with is it's all poison ivy, and I'm concerned that students and we have a lot of walkers that go up Old Mill Road, and the sidewalk is getting more and more narrow because the weeds are coming in. And is it the responsibility of the homeowner? Because these weeds are coming in poison ivy right over the stone wall.
I would say under most circumstances that it is because the town's right of way lays over top of the private property in most circumstances. So the right of way would include the sidewalk, but it would be on the property of the resident that's there. So I mean, generally speaking, the town's roadside maintenance program hits all aspects of town 2 times in the summer, and we all know if we mowed our grass twice in one summer, we'd have pretty tall grass
Right.
a lot of time throughout the course of the summer. So any help that we can get from residents in keeping the sidewalks clear and open, that'd be great.
So who owns coming down Old Mill Road? Is that owned by the town or is that owned by?
It's owned by UMass.
It is
Yeah,
UMass.
yeah.
And they maintain their property quite nicely, but they forget that they have property on Old Mill Road. But it really does come right beyond houses too, where people aren't taking. But I worry about, the kids are going to walk to school soon, and we have a lot of students that walk up to the middle school, and then they're going to get poison ivy because it's that bad. And I also have some out of towners that make fun of me for having such a mess coming down Old Mill Road because it should look better than that. But anyways, enough of that. Going on to litter, the litter of signs. I know, I will give you a chance to talk.
No, it's fine.
I've been dying to tell him this. The litter of signs around town, and an event finally gets over after the signs have been up for 2 months, and new ones are up. So now we have new ones up, but you have excavators, you have movers, you have a church, you have a realtor. They put signs even on light posts.
Yeah.
I think what we need to do is have we have a bylaw, but I think it would be great to, if you want to put a sign somewhere in town on public property, you need a permit. And if you don't have a permit, you get fined. We would make a lot of money. You could have so much money, you could probably open, more employees, more. You could pay for their insurance with the fines because we have that many signs. So enough of that. But it's really gotten ridiculous. I mean, intersections will have 2 for the same realtor. If it's a weekend, you have on Maple Ave, you have one on one side of the street, one attached to a light post, the other one on the other side, and all for the same realtor. It's crazy. Anyways, okay, I'm going to let you talk. What would you like to ask us? Not me.
Oh,
town
yeah,
manager.
well, I guess there's a few things. I did actually come with a few questions, but obviously once you get elected, I guess, maybe people are interested, maybe they're not, because I think the onboarding process, if you've never tried to be elected for a position, I think it could be interesting for some, maybe not. So tune out if you're not interested. But I think, my experience was fairly good, straightforward. I think Kevin actually, the night of the election, reached out to me and said, hey, let's get together and go into town hall, and there's a nice onboarding packet of here's all the things. There's a lot there and can be a little overwhelming, but we went through all that, and I've asked, a bunch of questions along the way, and you get a lot of information, you try to digest a lot of things, and that's kind of where we're at now, having gone through a few meetings and trying to understand what that process is like. So I've had an opportunity to ask Kevin quite a few questions, and we've met a number of times before today. So these questions are a little bit different, and hopefully more for, let's say, the audience at home than necessarily for me. But I will ask you, from your perspective, Kevin, what role do you feel, the select board plays in the community?
Well, I mean, I think there's a number of different ways that you could answer that. There's the I guess the most formal, which is, documented through the general laws. I mean, you're the elected chief executive officer of the community, and without any other legislation, that would mean everything from day-to-day oversight of all town staff and operations of the town. But as we all know, in 1953, the Town Manager Act was put in place, which took a lot of that executive authority and passed it along to the town manager. I think the common point of confusion in many towns in Massachusetts, especially for folks who may have lived in other parts of the country, is that normally the primary elected body in the community is the legislative body, a city council, a town council, something like that. But of course, here in New England, and specifically in Shrewsbury, that falls to a town meeting. So the select board plays a role as the chief executive officer, but all the day-to-day responsibility has been delegated to the town manager. So it puts us somewhere in a hybrid, council manager form of government.
Yeah, so one of the things to clarify, because I think there's a topic, whether it's in our emails or a term that gets used, purview, right? Like what's in the select board's purview, what's in the town's manager's purview. And I think there's maybe a philosophical difference. I think some of it is philosophical, some of it you could be, technically legislative, if you would, or legal. But if you look, there's a chart that I love, and I think if it's in actually the big purple book, sometimes it's yellow, but the annual book, town book from the town. And if you look at the org chart of the community, it starts at the top and it says residents. And from residents goes to select board, then a town manager and all the departments. So I think, in my perspective, I think there's a difference between purview and responsibility. I think anything that goes on in our town, in my opinion, is in the purview of the select board, but it's not our responsibility to address, because that potentially could be a department. Am I wrong in that thinking? Well,
it's certainly in your purview. You're elected by the residents of the community to ensure outcomes, happen. So you are directly elected in order to ensure the full operation of the town. But if you want to have professionally managed local government that's, absent of political influence in its outcomes, that's why certain authorities are delegated to the town manager to ensure that there is that buffer from the political process, which is associated with elections and decision-making based upon, a political arrangement versus a professional perspective that I and most other town managers across the state and the country bring when carrying out those duties, and I think it's a really good buffer and gives us an opportunity to ensure through the select board that we're meeting the demands and expectations and outcomes that they as individuals who are elected by the members of the public are carrying out. But I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate that. Yeah, there's no way to say that the select board doesn't have purview over all operations, because you do hold the title of chief executive officer. Town meeting, not only in 1953, but not seemingly, but many other opportunities has placed formal responsibility, as you said, into the town manager of carrying some of those things out.
Yeah, and I think that's just, initially, I think that's where I see maybe some, I'd say questions, but I definitely see there's kind of like, who's really supposed to be, either responding, or is this something that we should be listening to, or we should be hearing this, specifically say like a select board meetings at times, so it's like, well, this may or may not be directly in our purview, but I guess my viewpoint, which may differ from other board members, which is okay, is that I really think that if any resident would want to come in front of the select board for anything that's going on within the boundary of Shrewsbury, they're entitled to. We may not be able to act upon it or even solve it, but if that's what somebody wants to do, that's kind of where I believe we should always have that opportunity for somebody,
Yeah.
to say feel heard if that's should be their choice.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's certain exceptions to that, though. Whenever it gets into personnel matters and allowing people to come in and talk specifically, about matters that may compromise the, legal position of the town or infringe upon personnel matters as an employee. I mean, I do think that there is a line there. I'm a strong proponent for community engagement as well. The other thing that I think we just need to be careful is that there's not a false expectation that occurs when someone comes in and makes a statement to the board, because I think the board could put itself in a position where it grants the opportunity for someone to come in and speak. And if that person's not fully engaged, they could anticipate that the board is going to absolutely take action or most likely take action because of them coming in, versus not understanding kind of the, that delineation between the select board and the town manager.
I have a question.
Sure.
You're talking about at a select board meeting, correct? No?
Well, just recently, yes, but not holistically. But yes, we're talking about at a meeting in a public comment, let's say, not as part of an agenda item.
So a select board meeting, the purpose of that is to conduct the business of the town, right? So am I right?
Yeah, it's a business meeting.
It's a business meeting. You're conducting the business of the town. It's not really a show. This is a show. We're a show. But when you go to a select board meeting, you're in a pretty much a formal format where you're conducting the business of the town. The town manager gives you information so that you're kept abreast of what's happening in town and what needs to be done, or if there's a new project in town, or whatever. So when someone wants to come into a select board meeting, they have to go through the chair. That's the power of the chair, and the chair has to decide if it's purposeful for that to come before the board, or is this something that they just need to meet with, whether it be you or another select person.
Well, that's the way we've done it. That's not necessarily the way it should be done.
But that's the way.
Well, there's a policy that the board
there's a
has,
policy, right? And in which I've, one of those things that I talked about that I've actually discussed about changing, because a lot of other towns don't have that restriction.
What's the purpose, though? What would be the purpose of the meeting?
Because the meeting itself, of course, there's always agenda items, business of the town. It's only thing we're talking about here is, do you believe the members of the community should be able to, in a timed fashion, in a slot of that, provide feedback? Because if going back to the structure that we talked about, if we have purview over the oversight over the entire town, anything that happens in town, what other public forum do residents have, if they so chose? What body should they go in front of to voice that concern? So all I'm saying is...
So my question is this, because that's like really broad. So if I had a concern and I didn't like the way, I don't want to point a finger at it, I didn't like the way the man in the light department does his job. It's not appropriate for something like that to come before.
Well, no. But like that was what Kevin said about.
So that's where it's up to the chair to filter what someone's requesting and why. For example, we have had over the last few years people who have, I'm going to say, a project, and they want to come and present it. And they're so excited and they put so much work into it. And you want them to be able to present their project, but this isn't a show. It's a meeting. So are you presenting in a professional manner what you see as something that needs to take place? Or this is where you can get your place on the pedestal and speak to everybody? Because if that's the case, you need to figure out where to do that somewhere else, because this is a business meeting. But at the same time, I thought personally that it was funny that there had to be an agenda item to give people 5 minutes to talk. Right. It's like, for what? Like,
I should just be able to talk.
You should be able to go through
That's
the
what I'm
chair
saying.
and make an appointment.
Well, I don't even know if you should have to. I think that's a philosophical difference because other towns don't, and it's just one of those things that I fully believe that if and this is, like I say, a philosophy of
Right.
the local government is,
So-
if we're servicing, this is just my opinion, right? You can disagree with me. It's just, I believe that the residents and the voters of the community is who we're serving.
All right, so
And if-
pretend I'm elected and you're elected. So you have the 5 members of the board here.
Yeah,
They all have their own constituency.
sure.
4 of those constituencies may not care about hearing more about whatever the topic may be. Enough, you hear it at town meeting when they go, I move the question. That's someone saying, enough. I've heard everybody's opinion, enough. Let's get on with it. So I do believe there has to be someone making common sense decisions as to whether it's appropriate for something to come before the board or not. And if you want to have a forum to talk about whatever, book a room and do that.
We're talking about 15 minutes.
I know, but I'm
Period.
saying
Like 15
I know,
minutes. We're
but
not talking
I'm
about
not saying
hours.
they shouldn't come in. I'm saying if it's appropriate, by all means, let them come in and talk. Like I could come in and say, I have a dog complaint. I'm so tired of it. 6:30 in the morning, Joe Schmo down the street lets their dog out. It barks. It wakes me up if I open my windows. So I have to keep my windows shut so I don't have an alarm clock of a dog every morning. And so I come and I say, can you help me? That is appropriate to come before the board because they're the ones, right? Or I've tried to do it through, another channel. Can you help me
Sure.
or they can just call you on the phone and ask you that. They don't have to have their 15 minutes of fame on TV to do it. It's even faster to call you on the phone and say, hey, can you help me? I'm really upset over this. Can you help me get this done? And you help them. That's, as a select board member, what you do. You help them. And so you still can go on with your business, but you don't, it's not clearly defined as far as who should come in and who shouldn't come in. Whoever's the chair has to make a common sense decision as to whether it is or it isn't. And it's worked for all these years. And when you say they don't do that in other towns, well, is the other town a well-run town like Shrewsbury? Because Shrewsbury has a reputation for being a well-run town. And not being pompous about Shrewsbury, which I do very often. I think if it's not broken, why do we have to change it?
I think it's just, if you think about
Do you have someone that wants to come in?
No, I'm just, this is I've talked about this before. I mean, before even part of the election and part was running, it was erring on the sides of ensuring that the public has the opportunity, should they choose to be heard.
Okay, here's another example. Worcester Sand and Gravel selling their property and people were upset. We had that at town meeting and voted on two separate town meetings. People then suddenly heard about it, and then they were upset because they didn't like it. So the selectmen and the planning board, they let the people come in and talk for hours and hours and say the same thing over and over again. And when they were done, the people said, we weren't heard. Well, were you not heard, or you didn't like the end result? Because they gave you more than enough time to say the same thing repeatedly. And so someone has to make a common sense decision as to, okay, we're moving forward now. And so there's so many different circumstances where that can happen. I think that if you had someone who wanted to come before the select board, you talk to the chair and you say, this is what the person wants to talk about, blah, blah, blah.
This is a philosophical thing.
I
I'm
know,
not talking about
I know,
a specific
I know,
example,
I'm
because
using-
your example that you just gave about Worcester Sand and Gravel is nuanced. And the nuance, and there's a lot of nuances with that, because even initially, what is disclosed in town meeting, or what people really fully understood about the project to begin with at town meeting, is not exactly what they were told at the end.
Well, you say that, but did you ever watch a town meeting when someone gets up? You've talked, and you'll see this, you'll find this now as a member being on the select board. You talk about a topic for, say, 6 months before you get to town meeting in many formats, okay? So you talk about that, and then someone will say, I didn't know about that. I just had someone say to me, and it's a perfect example of what you're talking about. They said, I think that this project was snuck up on us. And I'm like, what do you mean snuck up on you? And so they said, nobody talked about it. It wasn't blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, so we don't have the Worcester Telegram and Gazette writing articles every day keeping us abreast anymore. And we have to rely on a small town newspaper to report, which is very difficult. And then you have the town manager's office bending over backwards, trying to figure out, okay, we sent a notice to the residents. We did it at the select board meeting multiple times. We did it at the finance committee. It's been at the planning board. We publish in so many different ways. We have, and I said to him, when are you going to figure out that you're never going to have enough ways to publicize for people to know that it was talked about in all those places, because they're not paying attention. They have busy lives, and they're not paying attention till it's in their face, and now it's too late. But that doesn't mean they didn't do their job publicizing it. So when you get to town meeting and someone then asks the question of whatever, and you sit there and go, oh my God, how do they not know that? That means they didn't do their homework. They didn't pay attention to any of the meetings. They come unprepared. Now they ask a question, and it's everybody else's fault that they don't have that information, not theirs for not doing their part. So I think there's equal responsibility here, where the town needs to make sure the information is out there. It's in public meetings. It's, that we carry out the rules of public meetings, that the information is distributed. And if someone doesn't pay attention, then they tell, and the person who said this to me always knew what was going on in town, but for some reason they weren't paying attention. So they felt that it was snuck up on them. And I was like, oh my God, if this person feels that way, other people do. And I don't know what we can do to give them more information. I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't be able to have the person come in. I think you should be able to do that through normal common sense. Talk to the chair and say, I'd really like this person to present this. Can you make it an agenda item? And do it that way. I don't think it has to be a formal, everybody gets 15 minutes, everybody can come in. It's a business meeting.
Most people wouldn't anyway. And I think if you feel passionate enough that you want to go in that audience, that should be something you're able to do. And I'm not saying we've ever denied anybody. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I think there's, from the outside perspective, if you've been in it, you've been in the finance committee, you've been a select board member, you're in the inner workings. If somebody who's on the outside has never really been involved.
And funny, I've been in the inner workings, and I watch people conduct meetings and think, stop them just move on. They've already talked about it. I'm sitting at home saying, enough, keep going. But that's because, yes, I've been around for many, many years. But I think that right now our society is trying to let and I say our society meaning in Shrewsbury, is trying to let everybody be heard, everybody be fair, everybody. And it's like, you can only go so far with that. And then finally you have to go, look, I've done my job. I've done my best. And they need to count on you so that if they have an issue, they talk to you about it, you can bring it to the board, because you can ask for it to be an agenda item through you. So it can be done already. It's just, like you said, different towns do it different ways. But I think we've been doing a good job. Okay. And now you're one of them. You're one of those elected officials. So you're one of the people that they're going to criticize too. And I had a friend that once said to me when I first got elected, you know what? It's a great job if you can say maybe. But as soon as you make your first vote, half the people you voted against are angry with you for it. So you can't please everyone. You can only do your best to make sure that you're doing what you believe is the best in the best interest of the town, in the best interest of the residents. And then everybody has different opinions.
Agreed.
So anyways, I could talk your ear off on that one.
Yes.
So go on. Keep going.
Oh, keep going. All right. So maybe I'll change this up a little bit.
Okay.
And this gets back to, because I think I have, and I've talked to Kevin and I've had conversations about this, but philosophy like on local government, as far as what the role of the government is in a town and what that looks like. We're talking now about form of government study about in Shrewsbury with, is this the best the best method for us? It'll be structured properly. Should we look at town meeting and select board? Is there another structure that's better for us? So,
Which we have done before, and it's good to do every once in a while.
correct. But the one question I have, and this is why I say philosophically speaking, and I pulled this. I know Kevin's looking to figure what this is, but this is from the MMA website.
Oh,
Okay, so at MMA website, you actually, I think every town, I don't actually know where this came from. Maybe Kevin does because he may know. But every town in Massachusetts, there's a little page where you can go to, and there's a town hall wants you to know. And this is leads into my question. So it actually reads here that says Shrewsbury is a full service local government driven by high performance and creativity. And then it goes on. A lot of other towns, and this is why I disagree with this statement. Not the fact that we don't have a full service local government, but I say if I define Shrewsbury, I would say, is Shrewsbury more of a community? Is a town representing the community and the aspects of the people that live there? Or is it really about the government? Because if you would look at towns like Grafton and Northborough and how they actually frame themselves, they'll say they're a quaint New England-like town, or community. So,
Quaint left us a long time ago.
well, it might be quaint, but it's more about, is it about the government of the town? When you look at how you define a community, or is it about the residents and the people who live in the community that's really defining what Shrewsbury is? So if I was to write
Who
on
wrote
that,
it?
I don't know. I have no idea.
I'd have to read the
to figure out what it is.
have
But
to read the whole
I would say if I was to describe Shrewsbury, that's not the description I would use.
What's it say?
A full service, like Shrewsbury is a full service local government. Like
Blah, blah.
it's not a full service. I mean, we have a local government, but that's not how I would define Shrewsbury, right? So,
Well, full service.
but this is what I say, just how we define it.
Yep.
So it's more about,
The people.
how do you, what is your viewpoint, I guess, of the role of local government when it comes to a community versus, let's say, in the community? How would you describe that?
So in my opinion, local government is the only level of government that actually builds community.
Yeah.
That doesn't other. And that's because one of the primary reasons is because we're nonpartisan, right? So if you listen to federal government leaders, they pit different aspects of the country against each other or in juxtaposition. But local government, in my opinion, is the only government level of government in this country that actually works to build community. That is, create a sense of place where everyone can have a high quality of life. Local government, there's nowhere to run, right? When you're elected to local government office, your constituents are only within the boundary that you have jurisdiction over. Mm-hmm. In any other level of government, your constituents are not just the people that vote for you. They are everyone that lives in the state, right? So, Representative Kane is elected by members of Shrewsbury and Westboro to be a representative in the general court, but she serves the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in her decision making. So I think that's a fundamental difference. So, just in short, local government is a community builder, and no other level of government, builds community as part of its core mission. So I don't know the details of the page, and I would say a couple of things from what I know you said is I think Shrewsbury is a full service local government. No. I don't think there's any government in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that provides more services than we do, and I also think that is a very government-centric source that you're getting from it because it's from the Massachusetts Municipal Association. So it's really, municipally focused. I don't think a local government should define the community. I think the community should define. That was only. We agree.
And it wasn't like I was trying to
It's just how it's worded.
I was just
right.
Because and obviously I always look at this perspective, and as I've said these things before, but I always say it's like how is it perceived? Because even going back to kind of what you said, when you talk about people feel like you mentioned it's snuck in or something like that, it's really all about people's perception. So I understand you may not agree with. Say I don't understand how they could have that, but I don't think we should ever just dismiss somebody and say they should have done a better job or something like that. I think it really is our job to try to help people understand, because I'm not saying you did, but
No, the
I
person
just
who said it to me could not have been closer to me. Not not in my household, but it couldn't have been closer to me. So
Right.
it boggled my mind. I'm thinking, if this person thinks that way, no
Right.
wonder why the other people do. And what it is they're in a busy world. They take their eye off whatever's happening on local government, and it happens. But I don't know the answer to what else can you do. So, for example, the town has information on Facebook. I don't have Facebook. I watch the meetings on TV. You know, everybody does it in a different way. But if you take your eye off of it, it's not like you have the Telegram where you can go and refer back to it. Because we used to have a reporter sitting in the room for every meeting.
Yeah, and it's hard, and I get it, and I think one of the things that a lot of feedback I had received, and I think one of the goals I really want to achieve, is how do we get more people involved locally? Because we see it. You know, if we have, we've only had a few things where we're appointing, individuals to boards and committees, and it's unfortunate we don't have. I wish we had. More resumes.
We have so
and
much
more,
talent in
we
town.
have tons of talent we
Right.
should take advantage of, and I wish
Yep.
more people would want to get involved.
Right.
And I don't know if that's, it's not an easy problem to solve.
But they go, you do it. You keep doing it. You
Well-
keep doing it. That's what they're going to say to you. You keep doing it.
No, and I think though that's not maybe even that wouldn't be the right response. But
No.
I think the goal is to say how do you pull more people in?
Right.
How do you find something that resonates with them? And how do we ensure that we are getting all that?
Right.
Because I always think, like, when you look at it and you say there's only 240 members of the 40,000, I don't know, less than 40,000, approximately 40,000 residents in the community that are involved with town meeting, and then even the smaller numbers. So those people who are really involved, they're a very, very small number. But the impact that you can make to all those others is tremendous. So I think that's always my lens when I went into this, was I was doing it for members of this community who may not either feel heard or don't have the time to really fully understand what's going on and what's going to impact them, and hopefully try to at least make them aware. Not say we're going to be able to change
Right.
everything,
You
because
can
things you
keep
can't
trying.
change.
And,
But
and,
that's
and let me
ultimate
know the
goal.
first time someone
will.
says to you, how come I didn't know about this? No, it's true.
Yeah.
You'll keep trying. I mean, they keep trying and using different forums.
Yeah.
And you will, as a member of the select board, you have a constituency. And whether it's as a town meeting member or a select board member, you have a constituency. So, but you still represent the rest of the people in the town, and the people you hear from. That's how you form your perspective on, is this working? Do we need to try something else? And if you can figure out, like, I look at different committees and I think, wow, there's so many people talented in this town that they go off to work, but why don't they want to come back and do what I do? Why don't they want to come back and be involved? And everybody, has different interests. Some people coach softball or coach baseball. Some people go to the library. I mean, everybody has their own thing. And so all you can do is the best job that you can. But if you can figure out other ways to get the word out, that would be really helpful.
We'll try.
And, reestablish the Worcester Telegram. Send that reporter. But, when the reporter, now I'm really dating myself. When we were not on TV, there was no such thing as cable television or SPAC. It was interesting. You could be at a meeting and the reporter, who was very good, would write about what happened at that meeting. And if he didn't feel like writing about that person over, on the board, they just left out of it. You wouldn't even know they existed or had anything to say. And they might have had a lot to say, but it was at the mercy of the reporter.
Yep.
And then we got on TV, and then every single person on the board had to be heard on every single topic. And then it got better. But for a while, it was like, oh my God, are we going to do this every night? And then it improved where people kind of settled down. But you do get a lot of feedback since we've been on TV, and more people do pay attention, which is good.
Yeah.
I don't like that we can't see when the selectmen are meeting and when they're not meeting, because it's not on the when you scroll to see what's on the government channel, all you see is the government channel now because it's so expensive to pay to have them put that in. I wish we could find another way to beat the system and have a TV guide for
What
Shrewsbury.
you should do is you should sign up for Facebook, and you get notifications, and every time it goes live, you will actually get a ping on your phone. It'll say the
And
select
I've
board is
been
going on.
protesting being on Facebook. And they're
Problem
gonna
solved.
make me come into the next century.
And it's pretty regularly scheduled. You know, we don't change the meeting times
Oh, I
very
know,
often,
I know.
so you
No,
can
but
put that in your calendar.
even when you
Oh, you wanted the replays.
the replays,
Yeah.
like,
YouTube.
I
Just use
wasn't
YouTube.
home
Go
on
to YouTube.
Tuesday.
YouTube's the way to go.
YouTube, I do.
YouTube's the way
That's
to
how I beat it. But I've had people say to me, you know, I can't tell when you're going to be on again, and it's like you haven't done another show, and I have to say to them, no, you have to do this. And anyways,
So you want to ask him a question? Or you
I
want me to
do.
get another one?
I just wanted.
All right.
Selco we've been getting internet scams about Selco. Like they're asking us to update things, and it's not Selco at all. There's got to be a way to notify Selco customers that there's a scam out. There's another scam out, and we've requested it through calling, and they said, "Oh, we can't do that." And it's like, no, you can do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we absolutely could. I think it's just hard to keep up, right? I mean, the other day I got an email that seemingly was from, oh no, I didn't get it. Someone else got an email that was seemingly from the chair of the select board, and it looked exactly right, but it's, I
Really?
understand what you're saying, but I mean, it's so
Widespread.
widespread. I mean, we see it all the time. We get a lot of emails that seemingly look like they're from an employee and they want their direct deposit updated. I mean,
Wow.
it's everyone has to be hyper vigilant about
Really?
everything, and unfortunately, you have to second guess an email from your own mother,
Right.
to make sure it's from them. But I understand what you're saying. The scams are just so rampant.
Yeah.
It's
I
tough.
know.
It's tough.
Just remind people, do not give out personal information
At all.
regardless, unless you unequivocally know who you were communicating with. So do not send
I know.
any information that could tie back to you.
And as much as you block this stuff, you still
Yep.
get it. West Nile virus, mosquito sample in the Grove Street area. They've done spraying. They'll be continuing to spray over the summer. Really important because we had such a wet spring, right?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Maybe what?
Maybe it's important, maybe it's not.
Well, if you get West Nile virus or one
Well-
of your relatives gets it, you'll see how important it is.
Well, only reason I say this, I'm kind of joking. This was the thing I actually talked about a little bit and brought it up because I live on the other side of Grove Street. And so,
You do?
yeah.
I have no idea where you live.
Well, don't look me up.
I won't be. I won't. It's not me stalking you because I have no idea.
I do know where you live, though. It's like, I think I left the door knocker on your door.
Oh,
No, because the reason I say that is it's an efficacy thing. Now, I get people get scared about, hey, there's triple E or there's, but keep in mind, if you look at the data behind this, and I'm a data guy, so they do traps. So if you have a mosquito, say you had 50 traps within Shrewsbury, and one mosquito out of, say, 300,000 was positive, they say, well, 1 out of 50 traps found this. And the other thing is, you don't even know, let's say that mosquito could actually transmit to a person. And then also with the spraying, when you come back and spray actually physically has to touch the mosquito to actually kill a mosquito. So when you look at where the road is, where the traps are, where the mosquitoes live, there's a lot
They're
of pieces
behind your
that
house.
have to go behind that to ensure that that's, so they are doing things, but I'm just going to say to people that it's not a foolproof mechanism to say that, number one,
have you ever taken care of a person with West Nile virus?
I have not personally, no.
Okay, you're talking to an infection control nurse retired over here, so we'll never agree on that. Let's just put it that way. I understand what you're saying about the efficacy, but something needs to be done to try to fight that and to stop it from spreading. But anyways, go ahead. I'll let you.
But I'm
ask
just
the
saying,
question.
even in that, there's things besides the spraying that people can do. Like you can
Right.
stay inside.
Stay inside,
After that,
cover yourself,
use
with
spray,
spray.
all those types of things. That's my
Right.
point. Is there is methods
Do more.
besides
Right.
just that.
Right,
that
but
can
this,
affect.
those are our responsibilities. The state is the one who does the spraying. So if we can improve the spraying, but I could go on anyways about some of the spraying we've had in town, and we left town and they didn't spray. I brought my little babies and we left town. Then we came back and then they sprayed. It was just like disaster.
We can talk about it.
Go
offline.
ahead.
I had a similar experience, so we'll talk about it
Did
offline.
you? Go ahead.
No,
Well,
but I
no,
was,
your
I
next
was
one.
going to go back to this. So back to the, I think the resident thing, because I always like to say,
Yep.
I think one of the key things in my way, I look at Kevin's responsibility is to make sure we are addressing concerns and priorities from residents. So my question to you is kind of, what are you hearing, recently, maybe the top 2 or 3 concerns or priorities you hear from residents, and kind of what we're doing collectively to address those?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it depends on how you look at that. So most of the time that we hear feedback from residents, it's reactive to something that's on the select board agenda. But so I think both reactively and proactively, we've been really looking hard at development within town. And I know we've had conversations about this. And I think over the prior, I'll say, 15 years, the town has really been focused on trying to spur development and what levers could be pulled to make development happen. And one of the biggest things that we did is Seward Route 20 in order to spur development, and we changed zoning and overlay districts to really try to promote development. And often that zoning didn't have to, but it incorporated housing in it to try to be a major catalyst or incentive, actually, I guess is the better term, for developers to come into the community, try to get at least a little bit of commercial development, coupled with residential development. So I think development is the number one concern that we've heard in the community. And, how are we going to approach that in the future? I think the system that's in place right now, the bylaws that we have in place right now, enables development, most specifically in that corridor. And if that's something that we don't think is the best policy anymore, then we need to change that. We've been working really hard, I think, with the select board to try to find that path to 10% subsidized housing inventory, to know that any changes that we're going to make to our zoning bylaws are actually going to be effective, not overcome by Chapter 40B. So number one, I think is the ongoing, continued evolution and development within the community. And then continuing to support the schools is something that, I hear, regularly, which is, obviously we know education is a big cost center of the community, and how do we continue to support that within the means that we have. So I think those are probably the 2 top areas that I hear from residents proactively on.
So can we ask some follow-ups here? Do I have to,
Sure.
do I have to get permission on the follow-up here?
No,
I don't?
we'll lose it.
So back on those 2 districts, I actually think it's a good thing to talk about, because there's actually 2, I guess, active right now that are going to, one actively in front of the ZBA that utilized an overlay district.
Yeah.
One, I think you recently mentioned, is potentially looking at it again in the Lakeway overlay district. My opinion is, yes, I totally believe we should do that, because I think when they were done, we also didn't have some of these additional 40B developments that had happened in the same area. So I 100% agree with you. Well, I don't know if that's what you're saying, but I think we should be looking and maybe going to town meeting at the Route 20 overlay district and at the Lakeway potential overlay district to say, should we have these additional as of right residential capabilities where you have 270 or 250 units, as part of that, based off of where we've seen a lot of the development residentially. Because I think what the initial goal was commercial development.
Correct. Yeah.
Not residential development. And it's we
Right.
haven't been successful in pure commercial development. I think probably maybe for a number of reasons. But
Well, a couple areas we have, right? Centec North, but that took an extraordinary amount of investment on behalf of the community and time, 20 years, to sell Centec North and get it developed. And then we were able to partner, GFI partners, with Physique Instrumenting and get that project.
Before you go any further, tell people where that is, because everybody asks what that project is on Route 20.
So I'm not sure if I'm going to get the address right, but it's on the hill if you're heading eastbound on Hartford Turnpike Route
Between
20.
Hebert's Candy Mansion and Market Basket.
Yes,
This
but
construction.
closer to my house.
Beyond Flynn's.
yeah, but it's
Not-
between
it's
between
east side of
140 and the top
Hebert's
of the hill, right after the car wash and all that. It's on the right.
Right.
That's a high tech company or a
Busy
clean manufacturer,
construction.
company that's going in there. But I just want to reflect back kind of on those two things about what I'm hearing and then what do we do about it, kind of that's an interesting part about my job as well, talking about contacts with the select board, right? So those conversations, I think, it's the role of the manager to identify them, understand them, and present options and solution to the policymaking body, the select board, on what it is their goals are for the community. And they don't do that in the vacuum, right? That is that connection between the elected and the electorate, right? And so the select board comes to me and says, hey, we're hearing from residents that there's, too much development in town, hypothetically, right? Or I say to the select board, boy, I'm hearing a lot about this. And they say, well, what could we do about it, right? That is the heart of my role, right? Well, we could do this, we could do that, we could do this. And then we look at those 5 options or 3 options. The select board says, let's do this. We need town meeting to do that. Town meeting says yes. And then it comes back to me and I execute it, right?
Yep.
Like to the best of my ability. And that whole part in the middle, the pure policy making process, it's my job to advise and provide options, but not make those decisions. I don't, you know what I mean? I don't have the agenda, whether we should be pro-development, right, or anti-development. It's my job to say, if you want to be anti-development, this is what's likely going to happen. If you're pro-development, this is what's likely going to happen. It'll, financials will happen. This is what will happen financially if you do this. This is what will happen financially if you do that, and really enable and facilitate.
But you have an opinion, though.
I do. I can. Yep.
I mean, you do.
Yep. Yep.
I know it's.
Well, I mean, so if you look at those two development
Yeah.
things, no development ever occurs in the community anymore, and
Yeah.
development continues. And I'll use that same spur, financial. I will, of course, advise the community that if we don't grow the tax base, then we will struggle to be able to provide services that residents may want. And I know that in some instances, when you grow, you have to provide more services. So there's a net difference. It's not a pure gross increase in revenue. But what are those trade-offs? So, but it's not an opinion because, I have a vested outcome in any of those, except for how we can most efficiently and effectively, run the community. And I honestly think that, I'll go there. I know, I'm not a resident of the community. And I think that, because I can always make that same decision on what's in the best interest of the community from a professional standpoint with no personal influence, not living here gives me an even greater opportunity to do that. Right? I don't have kids in the school system, all those things.
So you brought it up.
Yeah, sure.
I have to talk about this. I'm sorry. So it is. So when I was campaigning, it was shocking the number of people that actually said, what's the big issue? I think the town manager should live in town. Why doesn't he live in town?
Oh, yeah?
Seriously. Yeah, they do. And they're like, I think that makes sense. And I think the perspective is, I get, so your belief system, at least what you just stated, I don't want to misspeak for you, was you can be more, they say, independent because you don't have a vested interest in the outcome. I always give an analogy to people. I always thought, my opinion, right? There's differences of opinion. You don't have to, you have the ability not to. But it's more of, do you fully believe in if I was in charge of a company, like let's say Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, if he's using a Samsung phone, or if Papa John's is eating Papa Gino's, okay, are you really truly believing in what you're doing and the mission you're trying to achieve? So as a town manager, another thought process is, if you think and you believe in what you're doing and how you're guiding the community is 100% the right way, what you're doing for the schools is the right way, wouldn't you want to be here and have your family in that environment?
No, it's my perspective that it's no, because when I'm here, then those outcomes impact me as an individual. It impacts the value of my property, impacts the education that my kids are going to get. If I have an issue with, how my kids are being treated in a classroom, I can never not walk through the door and speak to the principal without being the town manager. Whenever I did that for my kids, raising them in Sturbridge, I never had that concern, right? So that's just one. And I just want to go back to one word you use, vested. I'm fully vested in Shrewsbury and the outcomes, but I'm not I don't have it doesn't personally impact me, other than if I'm not professionally properly managing this community to meet the outcomes that it sees for itself, that I'll no longer have a job, right? So, I mean, I am first and foremost vested in the community and vested as being a professional local government manager as my career. And I think that produces the best outcomes, not worrying if my street's going to get paved next year versus your street's going to get paved next year. There is no direct personal outcomes in Shrewsbury except for the highest quality of life for residents that, directly influences me. So it's a professional commitment to not only to Shrewsbury, but local government as a profession, which I've dedicated my life to, versus, and I understand what you're saying. Right?
Can I tell you about hiring? I was on the search committee, and I felt very strongly the town manager should live in town until I saw the applicants and realized that the best applicants that were out there were all people that would not have applied had they had the requirement to live in town. And I still believe, with no doubt, that of our applicants, there was no question who the best candidate was. And we got him in our town. We would not have gotten him, nor I think the second or third choices, had we had the restriction at this time, where before it was easy to say, oh, you have to live in town, and they would. You couldn't do that. I remember Dan having to move from Grafton to Shrewsbury. He thought it was the end of the world. He didn't want his kids coming into Shrewsbury, and we said, no, you need to tour the high school. You need to see. It's not what you think, because he was going to send his son to a private school in Worcester, and we said, wait a minute, if you think that's better, you need to come and see what this is like. And so that was probably our last chance of getting our best town manager choice to come to town. That was gone. That left the station, with this last round of applicants.
Yeah, and this is this. I always sometimes use analogies because being in the public versus private sectors, right? So in the private sector, this happens all the time. You recruit people and they relocate, right? So it doesn't mean you have to live here today, but I mean, this is just what people say. I'm not saying, you can have an opinion either way, but I know that people do that to say, okay, well, that's fine. I'm going to hire you. We're going to move your family across the country. We're going to do an expat assignment. We're going to send you to Hong Kong. You're going to live there for a while. It happens all the time. So I know what you're saying. It's like, but I know that I think people just have a difference of opinion because I understand what you're saying, where the conflict of interests, things that you said. I mean, I kind of know what you're saying in that schools because my father was a high school teacher. So I 100% know. But I went to the same high school my father was at.
Fun, huh?
But the good part about it was, right, and I know what you're saying, is that I never had a bad teacher because he made sure I never had a bad teacher. and I know that's
an influence.
What happened? What happened?
No, trust me.
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Yeah, I mean, so you use a really good example with, Tim Cook using a Samsung, right?
Yeah.
There's an example that I would use is, would you only trust your physician if they're a member of your family, right? There's a professional responsibility that your physician has to develop a medical outcome for you to keep you alive, right? So I see that as my role, or more akin to my responsibilities in supporting the town than, the use of a product. But it's a fair example.
Well,
yeah.
It just came up. People ask,
No, it's true. And I was one of those people before I saw the applicants.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can I ask another question?
Yes.
Is that okay?
I've got pages. We're not going to get to them. We'll just have to worry about it next time.
Two-part episode.
It's okay.
So
we'll have you again.
The follow-up question back on the development side, and this goes back to when you talked about how the select board, town meeting, all these different departments interact on an initiative, MBTA. Actually, now knowing where it ended up and the process we went through, number one, would you do anything different knowing what the outcome was today? And I guess looking back upon that, I'll just ask the one question. Would you do anything in that process or throughout that based off how it ended up versus where it started?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, and I think that's true with any process. We definitely have some administrative misses along the way and, couldn't bring a product to town meeting within our own timeline for that May. And, we never like to do that. That's part of the public process. I think everyone acted with the best of intentions, but sometimes we don't perform, or we decide to change course. Other than that, I think the zone and the location, and if we want to talk specifically about 33 Green Street, I still think we got the best outcome there, because it's, I'll just talk about it a little bit, a lower unit count that would have went in there before zoning was overlaid there. So I think we still got the best outcome that we could. But so I would still recommend the same district, knowing everything that I knew now.
Even with the 40B side of it, because it really, as I was going back to, knowing that,
Yep.
I think during the process, it was really, there's already 40Bs
Yeah.
there, nothing else is going to get built there. And I guess my perspective is, maybe I'm wrong, because I have to say I wasn't I wasn't on that side, on this side at that point. But knowing that, and seeing what the impact potentially would have been, or actually was, let's say, of having a 40B switch zone,
Yep.
and the impact to the whole process of potential long-term safe harbor. I guess that's more I was getting at, to say.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair.
Was that underestimated, that they really would switch zoning based off of the conversation?
Yeah, so I think the outcome I'm satisfied with still. I think it was a much bigger risk than we anticipated it was. I think it was a much bigger risk. I think the outcomes were still okay, but more risk than maybe I would have taken on if I had that clear ability to see to the end. Yeah, it's a higher risk factor.
We have 2 minutes. Do you have anything that
Oh,
can be answered quickly?
No, not in 2 minutes.
Okay, so my turn.
Definitely not.
I don't want to miss stating that Dr. Sawyer got the Mass President's Award at the Mass Association of Superintendents meeting, and he should be congratulated for that. And once again, we're fortunate to have someone who's so respected being the superintendent of our schools. Then this is the interesting one. Caitlin Smith, who was a Shrewsbury High graduate only in 2022, got an Emmy for her Paris Olympics coverage. She did this with other colleagues at NBC, and it was the outstanding graphics design, but she got an Emmy. The kid's still in
great.
college. She goes to Ithaca College. So I thought that was really interesting. And Joe Sawyer talked about how he's so proud that he can go different places in town, and he's, he can go to the doctor and it's someone that was a Shrewsbury High graduate, and he goes to, different professionals around town, and they were all Shrewsbury High graduates. And we need to remember that we disagree, we agree, but we always work for the best interest, and so doesn't the school department. And it showed, and so congratulations to him and also to Caitlin Smith. I have less than 30 seconds. Let's see. We need to pay more attention to what's happening with Selco on North Quinsigamon Ave. The farm at Tonella, which is 23 acres. Is that near where you live? I don't know.
525 Harvard.
And
Yes.
so, another project going in there, and we deal with, someone having a right to sell their property, properly zoned, and all that goes into it. But
This needs to be another episode, Donna.
I have too many, and I can just say thanks for watching. We'll see you next time, and maybe we'll have Gregg back because we have more to hear. Thank you.